Okay, hi everybody. This is Illustrator Lesson 2, and we're going to start with Lesson 2 because it goes over the layout of Illustrator, and Lesson 1 just jumps right into doing a lesson. So we're going to start here. And this is what Illustrator looks like when you first open it. If you hit this double arrow over here, then you get two columns for on your Tools panel. And so that might be one change that looks different on yours. It depends on the size of your monitor, whether it's one or two columns by default. So that's what mine looks like, and we'll get into all this other stuff later, but if you hit the double arrow over here, it expands your panels. So these are all your panels over here, and your Tools panel is always going to be on the left-hand side, and your other panels are going to be on the right-hand side, although you can undock them and bring them out if you wanted it out for some reason. So to put it back, you just hover until you see the blue line, and it sticks it back in there where you want it. You can also move the whole panel if you want to, and minimize it so it's just the icons instead of the expanded panels. And we can drag it back over here. Let's see. So it shows up blue, and then it's docked again on the right hand side. And there's nothing in these panels right now because we don't have a document that we're working on. It's just a blank screen. There's no document. If there was, then we'd see a bunch of stuff up here as well. So I'm just going to collapse those. And I just wanted to point out that if things get messed up, let me just mess something up, and you don't want it to be like that, and you don't know how to get it back to where the default is, you go up here to where it says Essentials, and you can come down here and hit Reset Essentials, and then it goes back to the default where you started up. So that's really helpful, especially if one of your toolbars disappears. Sometimes that happens, you don't know how. Probably a keyboard shortcut that you didn't mean to push. So some of these other things, these are just your workspaces. Like if you're going to be doing a lot of typography, for example, then your panels are going to be different. You've got your character panel. Different things are open than normal. So the Essentials is just sort of a general. So that's what we use for this class. So that's just your workspaces. You could also make a custom workspace, which we're not actually going to get into. So you have a set. So you could do a new workspace. You set some of your panels up, and then every time you log in, you can use that particular workspace. Alright, so to begin this little mini lesson, you go and open Bridge. So File, Browse, and Bridge. And Bridge is just something that helps you find documents easier. And it's an Adobe product. It's connected with all the software that we're going to be using. But what's nice about it is it shows you an icon. Instead of just a symbol, it shows you a picture. So if you're looking for a picture, then it'll show you a thumbnail. A thumbnail is just a small version of that. So what we're going to be looking for are the AI02 lessons, and that's going to be in the shared folder, which I showed you how to use the other day, but I'll go over that in class if you need to. So you double click the AI02 lessons because that's what we're working with. And again, you can see a little picture, a little thumbnail of what we're looking for. And so my screen is going to look different than yours. I just want you to know that. But as far as once you get into where it's kept, we double click it and it will open for us in Illustrator. Sometimes you get an error message that says file not found. And right now I'm getting an error message that says not responding, but now it is. So if you get the file not found, sometimes if you try it again, it works. And sometimes you just have to go File, Open, instead of browse and bridge. And sometimes you still get an error message that says file not found. It seems to be connected to our network, and it just happens from time to time. But if you just keep trying, usually it'll open for you. And usually when you get the file not found, it's because you've tried to open it out of your folder instead of going file open through Illustrator or browse and bridge. So just for future reference, try and open Illustrator first and then go in and say file open or file browse in bridge. It'll do the same thing. Alright, so this is the document that we're working with. It's supposed to be a CD cover, and I'm not sure which is the front and which is the back. Maybe it's just two different versions, but you can see like the seam down the middle is where it would be folded for us to go in a CD case. So the first thing we want to do before we mess with anything is to go File, Save As. You always want to save your work, obviously. So since this computer isn't going to look like yours, it's not going to make a whole lot of sense, but you're going to look for that H drive. It says H:, and then it says your student number. You'll double click that, and I'm just going to put it on the desktop because that's where I have a lot of my stuff, but don't put it on your desktop because it's not going to be on the network and you could lose it really easily. So I am going to make a new folder, so you could right click or come up here to create new folder, and you're going to call it Intro to Computer Graphics. That's the class. Or if you felt like it, you could just do Computer Graphics. I'm okay with either one. Then you're going to double click that, open that up, create another new folder, and call it Illustrator. Open that up, another new folder, Chapter 2. Okay, so organization is key in this class. If I can't find your work, I can't grade it. And if I can't grade it, then you're going to get a 0 or a missing, and that's not going to be good. So again, double click. So now you're putting it inside the Chapter 2 folder. And we're going to rename this so we know that it's the working folder. So you're going to go _work _ first name, your first name, and then save. And you have to hit it save twice. Hit continue, and then on here you just want to make sure that it says Illustrator CS6. Everything else should remain at the default, and hit OK. And that's going to be pretty typical for everything that we do, is you leave that at the default. Okay. Just a couple other things here. Just some vocabulary. The artboard is where the artwork is. You can see this black line going through this document. And that's the artboard. That's where the artwork is. And the space outside, all this gray space, is the scratch area. So you can draw stuff out here in the scratch area and then bring it in to your document so that you've created it the way that you want to before you bring it into your document. So what the difference is between the artboard and the scratch area is only what's on the artboard will print. So when you send something to the printer, only what's on the artboard is going to be printed, which is good to know, but you also want to delete all the stuff off the scratch area just so your file isn't too big if you were actually going to send that to print. But otherwise, if it's just for you, you can keep it if you need those notes or whatever. So that's the difference between the artboard, and there's two artboards here. There's the top one and the bottom one. You can have up to 100 artboards in one document. Not sure why you would. And your artboard can be as big as 19 feet by 19 feet. Again, I'm not sure why you would do that, but you could. Okay, so to navigate from one artboard to the other so that you're just looking at one, down here at the bottom, you click that little drop down. It should say 2, or maybe it says 1. And you're just going to click, you want it to say 2, so make it say 2 if it says 1. And so that's going to select the second artboard. And now you're going to hit Control 0, and now we see the artboard full screen. Control 0, so I was holding Control down and then I added in the 0 while I was holding it down. That brings up your document to full size, to full screen. You could also go up here, View, Fit Artboard in Window. Same idea. So that's one that you're going to use a lot, and that's one that I'm going to need you to memorize. Control 0, not Control O. I do that a lot because I'm used to opening documents, Control O, but Control 0. And then we can click on, down here, if we go back to the artboard navigation, you can click on 1, and it will bring up that other artboard. And when I hover over things and I get that green, all that green, those are my smart, what is it called? My smart grid or something. Let me look. Smart guides. Smart guides. So there's a check mark next to smart guides. If I didn't want that on, I could turn that off. And so now when I'm hovering over things, I don't get the green anymore. And which is okay for this one. But a lot of times you're going to want that because you're going to want to like connect a line to something or connect two pieces, and you want it to connect exactly. Okay, so other navigation tools down here that you could use. You could click the next or the previous artboard. Not ones you're going to use a lot, but you could. And then we're going to open up the artboard panel, and so there's two ways you can do that. It's the one on the bottom here. If I hover over it, it tells me what it is. I click that, I open it. So there's my two artboards. Or I could have gone up to Window and selected Artboards. There's a check mark there, so I know that it's on, or it's open. So I don't need to click that again, otherwise it will close it. And these are alphabetized. So if you're looking for something, it's going to be in alphabetical order. So those are my artboards. And really the only thing I wanted to point out here is if you double click the icon over there, or just click it, I don't think you need to double click it, you can rename your artboard. So we could call this one Back. But what is more common that you'll use is the size. So you can change the size of your artboard here, which is like your canvas size or your document size. When you set it up, when you go File New and set something up, maybe you type in the wrong number, or maybe you reverse width and height, and I come around and I say, oh, your artboard's the wrong size. It's really easy. You just click that icon and change the width and height to what you need it to be, and it will adjust. Or you could rename it, which you're probably not going to do a whole lot. You could also create a new artboard here, and this icon is called an upturned page, and it's on the bottom of every panel. So if you hear me say the upturned page on the artboard panel, that would be this icon right here, and it would create a new artboard. And it keeps the numbering system going. So if I did another one, it'd be artboard 3, 4, whatever. But if I wanted to make an exact duplicate, then I would click the layer, whatever the words that I wanted to duplicate, and then I would come down to the upturned page, and it would make a copy. And if I wanted to get rid of some, like I want to get rid of all of these, I'm going to hold down Shift and then click Artboard 2, and it's going to select everything in between. And that's a command that's used on any software, not just Illustrator, holding down Shift. Or you could individually click each one, click and drag down to the trash can, and now we have those two, which are the exact same. Not sure how I did that, but it doesn't matter. So what we're going to do now is go up to File and Revert. Revert, yes. So it's going to go back to my last save, and I haven't made any saves since I first renamed my document. So we're just back to the beginning, which is what I wanted. Okay, so now you're going to change your screen mode, which is down at the bottom of your tools panel, whether it's one column or two, it should be at the bottom. And you're going to click that, and just going to select normal screen mode. Okay, so this is the normal screen mode, and if we change it to full screen mode with menu bar, then we get more of a full screen, but we still have our tools panel, and the other panels. I'm going to collapse that because I don't need that open. And then we could also switch to full screen mode, and it gets rid of our panels. Everything, gets rid of everything. So if you're really familiar with the keyboard shortcuts, like, you could still use them. So you could use the zoom tool. The zoom tool, the keyboard shortcut is Z. So there's my zoom tool. So I'm zooming in. You know, as you go, you'll learn more of the keyboard shortcuts. But to get out of this, it's, you know, it's an easy click, but if you don't know this, then you get kind of confused. So you just hit the escape key and you're back to the normal view. So that's how you do that. And there'll be times when we'll be using that. So they point out in this book that we use that you can switch to an outline view, which should sometimes make it easier to find something that you're looking for, or click on something in particular. And that's what that looks like. It's the outline view. It's like gets rid of color, just makes everything see-through so you can see stuff better. And to get back, you just go View Preview. So this is the preview mode. And you'll be using that from time to time. And then as far as zooming in, I just told you that the keyboard shortcut for that is Z. But you could also go up to View and zoom in. But that is really time consuming and no one ever does that. What people do is hit, you saw that if you go to View and zoom in, the keyboard shortcut for that is Control and plus, and then to zoom out is Control and minus. So if you hold down Control and hit plus, you can zoom in, and if you hit the minus key, you're zooming out. And that's what most people use. You could also come down here, that's your zoom tool, and by default you're zooming in. There's a plus sign on my magnifying glass. To change it, you hold down Alt and it becomes a minus sign, and that's zooming out. And then I'm going to hit Control 0 and go full screen because I can. Okay, another way to check your zoom is down here in the corner. So it says 225%. So that's how zoomed in I am at the moment. And so we want to type in a 120. And it will zoom in 120%. and you could type in, whatever it is that you need to do. You can go from, I'll show you here, 3.13% is the smallest, and then 6,400% is the most you could do. So go ahead and choose 66.67, and you can see that. You could also, with the zoom tool, you can also click and drag, and that's called a marquee. That box that I'm creating is called a marquee. I'm not releasing my mouse yet. So let's say I draw a box around here. So that's what it zooms into. So that's helpful sometimes if you want a particular area that you're zooming into. And then if I hit the V key on my keyboard, V as in Victor, that gets me back to my selection tool, which is, probably the most common tool. And too bad it's not, something easier to remember, because V stands for selection. There's no correlation. It's just, that's what it is. So, and then if I hold down Control and Spacebar while I'm in the selection tool, then that temporarily, wow, that was really close, accesses my zoom tool. So Control and Spacebar, but only when I'm in the selection tool. And so to zoom out, I was holding down Control, Alt, and Spacebar. And that's another way to zoom. But again, I think most people, Control plus or Control minus gets the job done pretty quick. I'm just going to hit Control 0. Okay, one of my favorite tools, I don't know why I like this, but if you, if we click on it, it's called the hand tool, and you can just click and drag your document around. And most people forget about this one or don't know it's there or whatever, and they're using these, they're zooming in and out, whatever. The keyboard shortcut for it is pretty easy. You just hold down the space bar. So if I'm in the selection tool and I hold down the space bar, it turns into this hand, and I can move around my document to where I want it to be. And it just saves a lot of time. So another thing is you can double click the hand tool and it will fit the artboard in the window, which is great. So a couple other things that are going to come up a lot. I already talked a little bit about the selection tool, but the selection tool is what moves things around. So if you choose the photo of this guy with the guitar on the first artboard, and if you click and drag it, that's how you move things around. So I just moved it down a little bit. But if I want it to be someplace precise, if I double click on this, then I could move it. I'm going to type in -0.25, and it would move it that much. But if I wanted to be even more precise, up here at the top, I have my X and my Y coordinates. So my 0, 0 is up in the upper left corner, not in the bottom left corner like it normally is, like when you think of an X and a Y axis, like a grid. So that's my X and my Y, and this reference point box is super important. So wherever that little box is that's highlighted, I can move that around. That's my reference point. So it's basing it off of that. It's not really basing it off of true 0, 0. It's basing it off of wherever I put my reference point. And you could also, the width and the height here, so if you have like a rectangle and you wanted to change the height of it, you could do do that, or if you want to change the size of it, you could do that there. And so those are really important. But your selection tool, you may notice that there's two different arrows. There's a black arrow and a white arrow, and we'll talk about the difference between those once we get more into this. So the type tool is also really important. So you're going to click on the type tool, and I want you to select the S. Is not selecting. It's just being slow. I need to be patient. Or not. Something weird is happening. So just delete the S and then make it a capital S. Retype the S with a capital S. So it says sketch. Still says sketch, but with a capital S. So that's that. To get out of this, you could hit the escape key. And I'm no longer in that text box there. Alright, so on your tools panel there's a lot of hidden tools, and you know that there's a hidden tool if there is a little white triangle in the corner. And so we're going to go to the type tool, you click and hold it, and then you see all these other tools. We want to make sure that nothing is selected at the moment, so if you go up to select, deselect, there's no green box anywhere, so nothing is selected. And let's see. So there's this little arrow over here, and if you click over there and hover on it, then it changes everything to an icon, and it's we've taken it away from the tools panel, so it's no longer connected. I can move that around. If I don't want it there, I can put it back or not. So you can tear that off if you wanted to. I guess you can just close it if you're done with it, and it goes back. So sometimes that's handy if you're using a lot of different tools, like when we use the symbols. We'll probably disconnect it. I already showed you how to change it from 2 columns to 1, which is just the double arrow. And let's see, that's about it. This line up here is called your control panel, and it's a contextual panel, meaning that it changes depending on what command you're in or what is selected, so it's always changing. So you have to be in the right tool sometimes to get what you're looking for. You can customize it a little bit if you pull down the this is called your panel menu button, and on every panel there's one of these buttons, and so I just want to point that out because we use these a lot. So there's other options in here, so you could turn stuff off. Like if you didn't want that in there, you may not. Let's see, something that you would notice. Well, we could also dock it to bottom if you felt like if it was easier for you to have it down there, you could change that. Or back to the top. We could turn off the character, and then we should see that stuff disappear. So, you know, those are the things that we could do, is turn things off or on with the menu, the panel menu. You could also move this around if you felt like it by grabbing, there's like a dashed line on the end there. You can move that around if it's getting in your way or something. And then I showed you how to dock and undock the panels, the other panels. So that is pretty much it. The rest of the book talks about making a custom workspace, which no one ever really bothers to do in this class. There's not really any need for it. And that's about it. So hopefully you were able to follow along with that.